3 months after giving birth to my daughter, I stumbled upon my husband's secret social media account in the middle of the night. He was pouring out his grievances. Marriage is a joke. From the moment she got pregnant, I found her disgusting. The smell of her made me sick. Her body is fat, smelly, and saggy. You know what I mean. I have to hold back every time. She makes me want to puke. I'd rather use my hand than touch her. Finally, the baby's born. My daughter is beautiful, but she's disgusting. All that gross fluid. Young women smell so much better. Now, when my wife touches me, I get goosebumps. Someone commented, "Aren't you afraid your wife will divorce you?" He replied, "She's fat and ugly now. Hasn't worked in forever. Who would want her besides me?" The next day, after dropping off my daughter, I placed the divorce papers in front of him. He looked at me with disdain. "Rose, do you think anyone will want you after you leave me? Fine, we can divorce, but the daughter stays with me, and you leave with nothing." I stared at this man I had loved for 10 years and realized how ridiculous I had been. Some people don't just become terrible overnight. They've been rotten all along. Chapter 1. My daughter is 3 months old now, and her face is starting to take shape. My mom always says she looks a lot like I did when I was little. She's a good baby, only wakes up once a night to feed. But Nicholas complains that it disturbs his sleep. I stay in the master bedroom while my mother-in-law brings the baby in to feed her at night. He claimed he didn't want to interfere with my bonding time with our daughter and volunteered to sleep in the guest room. After I finished nursing, my mother-in-law carefully took the baby away and told me to get some sleep. Watching her leave, I suddenly felt content. Nicholas understood me, loved our daughter, and my mother-in-law, far from being neglectful because the baby was a girl, took excellent care of me and treated my daughter like a treasure. For a moment, I couldn't fall asleep, so I grabbed my phone and scrolled through social media. Then I saw a disturbing post from a user less than 100 meters away. Their profile picture was blank, and the content was nauseating. After sleeping with my secretary, I find my wife even more revolting. She's old and ugly after giving birth. I frowned. I had just given birth too, and I knew how hurtful words like that would be to a new mother. I clicked on the profile and found the whole account was full of complaints about his wife. "The fat pig still wants to sleep with me. I get goosebumps every time she calls me husband. She's so disgusting. Guys, she cried in front of me today, and all I could think about was how gross her tears looked on her fat face. Marriage is a joke. I want a divorce so badly. If it weren't for not wanting my daughter to grow up in a single-parent home, I would have divorced her by now. Anyone feel me? I'd rather use my hand than touch her. She's loose and saggy." In the comments, most women were calling him a jerk, telling him to let his wife go. Some men agreed with him, while others called him out for his behavior. One comment asked, "Aren't you afraid your wife will see this and divorce you?" He replied, "She looks like this now. Hasn't worked in forever. Who else would want her? It's not that I can't leave her. It's that she can't leave me." As a mother and a woman, looking at men like this made me furious. Seeing how close he was to me, I decided to keep scrolling to see if I knew him. I kept going until I found a post from August 27th. The picture was of a man's large hand holding a tiny one, captioned, "My daughter is beautiful." The next post said, "How can women leak so much disgusting fluid?" I wanted to throw up. My hand froze, trembling. Because I recognized the man's hand, it was exactly like Nicholas. I've been with him for 10 years. I could recognize his hand in an instant. I shut off my phone, took a deep breath, and held back my tears before turning it back on. I read through every single one of his posts. Each one was filled with contempt for me, with complaints about me. He even logged the dates of his affairs. I matched them with our chats on WeChat. The first time he slept with his secretary was on the day of our daughter's 1-month celebration. When he told me he'd be home late, his secretary didn't want him sleeping in the same bed as me. That very night, he suggested we sleep in separate rooms, claiming it was to give me more bonding time with our daughter. I calmly took screenshots of his entire social media feed and sent them to my lawyer friend, along with the message, "Help me draft divorce papers." She replied almost instantly with a question mark. I sent her one of the screenshots. She didn't respond for over 10 minutes, then came back with, "Babe, I'll make sure he leaves with nothing." Chapter 2. My friend and I stayed up all night. By 7 a.m., she was at my door, handing me the divorce papers she'd worked on all night. My mother-in-law happened to be leaving with my daughter. I wanted to give her time to process, so I asked my friend to take her and the baby to my parents' house. I called my parents too. Before she left, my mother-in-law glanced at me, as if she wanted to say something, but she left without a word. I went to the bathroom and stared at my body, 40 pounds heavier than before. I used to be a girl who loved beauty, but now, my face was much bigger, and the rolls around my waist looked like 2 swim rings. Do I regret it? My daughter's face popped into my mind. No, I don't regret it. I'm heavier because I had my daughter. I don't believe I gained weight just for him. My daughter isn't just his. She's mine too. I can lose the weight. But Nicholas, he shouldn't have broken his vows. I might have been blind to fall for a jerk, but I'll cut my losses in time and end this marriage. I splashed cold water on my face, waking myself up. At 8 a.m., Nicholas woke up. As usual, he came to the living room looking for our daughter, but saw only me sitting there. I caught the flash of disdain in his eyes. So obvious, yet something I hadn't noticed before. He still asked, "Honey, where are mom and the baby?" I didn't answer, just looked him straight in the eye. "Nicholas, have you done anything behind my back?" His face instantly turned impatient, his voice annoyed. "What? Are you getting paranoid now? Haven't I treated you well?" I didn't respond. He realized his tone was off and quickly tried to comfort me. "Don't overthink it. Honey, I just woke up grumpy. Did mom take the baby to get breakfast? I'll go freshen up." "Nicholas." I called his name as he turned around. He looked at me. "What?" "Let's get a divorce," I said calmly. From the moment I found out about his resentment towards me to the moment I asked for a divorce, 5 hours had passed. During that time, I considered whether I should just endure it, pretend I hadn't seen anything, lose weight, and dress up. Maybe he'd eventually come back to me. But my brain kept telling me, it's not possible. Once there's a first time, there will be countless more. I am still me, before the baby, after the baby, and when I lose weight in the future, I'll still be me. Nicholas despises me, not a version of me. There's no reason for me to put up with this. Nicholas's face darkened. "What are you playing at now? I told you to stop watching those dramatic women online." I didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled up his social media profile and held it in front of him. I saw a flicker of panic on his face, then resignation. He slumped on the sofa with a sigh. "All right, Rose. Which man doesn't cheat? Look at yourself. I promise I won't divorce you, and I'll keep treating our daughter well. Just lose the weight, and I'll end things with her." He spoke in a condescending tone, as if he were doing me a favor. "Is that good enough for you?" I suddenly felt so grateful I'd chosen to divorce him. Thank goodness I hadn't let a man like this make me doubt myself. My gaze was cold as I looked him in the eye and said, "Nicholas, I'm not going to say it a third time. We're getting divorced." Chapter 3. Nicholas sneered, leaning back on the sofa. "Rose, have you even looked at yourself lately? You think you can find another man like me after we divorce? Sure, I cheated. But so what? In the end, I'll still come back to the family. I really don't get what you're making a fuss about." Looking at the man I'd been with for 10 years, it felt like those 10 years of memories were nothing but a pile of garbage, constantly making me sick. I suddenly ran to the bathroom and threw up. It was disgusting. How had I lived with this man for so many years? When I composed myself and came back out, Nicholas had already changed and was ready to leave. Seeing me, he was about to walk out the door. I spoke up. "Nicholas, if you don't sign, then I'll see you in court." He turned and looked at me. "Rose, you're asking for this. You want a divorce? Fine. Emma stays with me, and you leave with nothing." He opened the door and smirked, as if challenging me. "If you don't agree, we'll just keep dragging this out. As long as I don't agree, the divorce won't happen." Bang! He left. At that moment, I felt incredibly calm. I didn't want to be controlled by anyone. If Nicholas didn't want to settle things peacefully, then we'd tear each other apart. 10 years had turned into a joke. In the end, we couldn't even part on decent terms. I was determined to get what was mine. My daughter is mine, and so is my share of the property. I opened Nicholas' social media profile and saw that he had already deleted a lot, but I still found the account of his new secretary. When a girl is in love, she's always blind. This girl's social media documented all the little moments between them. She even wrote about how she was willing to stay by his side forever. Half an hour ago, I might have felt sad, thinking about my past with Nicholas while reading her posts. But now, all I felt was relief that I had this evidence to use against him. After getting everything together, I drove back home. My divorce from Nicholas wasn't just between us. It also involved our families, and both sides deserved to know the truth. As soon as I got to the door, I heard the laughter of the elders playing with the baby inside. I walked in and asked my friend to take Emma to the bedroom. The three elders noticed my serious expression and immediately grew tense. "What's wrong, Rose?" After I explained everything, my mom started crying, and my dad, furious, said he wanted to go beat Nicholas up. Only Nicholas' mother, Chan's mom, was staring at the screenshots I had taken with trembling fingers. I held onto my dad's arm. "Dad, it's already happened. I want to divorce Nicholas, but he's saying I have to leave with nothing and give up custody of Emma." "That's nonsense." Before my dad could say anything, Chan's mom slammed her hand on the table and stood up. She walked over to me, held my hand, and apologized. "Rose, I'm sorry. I thought he was different from his father, but deep down, they're the same. Don't worry. I won't let you walk the path I did. I'll deal with Nicholas. You just focus on taking care of Emma here at your parents' place." Then she turned and left my house. Yes, Nicholas' father had cheated, too. His mistress' child was born just 2 months after Nicholas, and his father had used Nicholas as leverage to force Chan's mom to leave with nothing. Chan's mom acted quickly. By 4 in the afternoon, she had thrown out all of Nicholas' belongings. She even changed the locks, and the first thing she did was make sure I recorded my fingerprints for the new lock. "Rose, don't worry. This house is in my name. Once you and Nicholas are divorced, I'll transfer the property to you." The old lady said this while chopping vegetables, not even looking up. Watching her back, I knew she was deeply hurt. She must have been struggling to accept what her son had become. Chapter 4. At 9 that night, Nicholas came home and tried to open the door. He realized the code had been changed and, for a moment, thought he had gone to the wrong house. He looked up at the house number to confirm it was his. He tried several more times, but the password was still wrong. Frustrated, he angrily called me while I was discussing with my friend how to make sure Nicholas would leave with nothing. Seeing his call, I immediately hung up, and Nicholas bombarded me with messages on WeChat. "Nicholas Rose, who gave you the right to change the locks? This is my house. It's my mom's property. Who gave you the authority? Nicholas, don't push me. Open the door now. Nicholas Rose, stop pretending you don't see this. Why are you making this so ugly? I never realized you were this kind of person. Nicholas, I must have been blind to ever fall for someone like you." Then came a series of vile insults, mostly attacking my weight and appearance. I was already numb to it. I calmly took screenshots and sent them to Chan's mom. Soon, Nicholas went quiet, but then the police showed up. "Ms. Liu, Mr. Chan has reported you for unlawfully entering his residence. Please come to the door." When I got the call from the police, I was stunned for a moment, then immediately went outside. Chan's mom came out too, holding Emma, while the police and Nicholas exchanged glances. Before anyone could say anything, Nicholas pointed at me and shouted, "Officer, I suspect she tricked my mom into changing the locks. She's a con artist. I bet she married me to steal my family's property. And now that we have a kid, she's..." Before he could finish, Chan's mom slapped him across the face, knocking him sideways. The police and Nicholas were both startled. The officer shouted, "What are you doing? You can't hit people in front of a cop." "I'm his mother. I'll hit him if I want to." Chan's mom was fuming, and I hurried over to hold my now-awake daughter. Chan's mom continued, "This is my house. I changed the locks. I can let whoever I want live here." Nicholas, clutching his cheek, glared at me. "Rose, I can't believe you do this. Did you put my mom up to this? You've got some nerve blaming Rose. After everything you've done, you have the audacity to come back here. Chan's mom yelled at him. I don't have a son like you. Everything I have is going to Rose and Emma. At this point, the officer understood what was going on. After some brief mediation, he said this was a family matter and left it for us to handle ourselves before leaving. Nicholas, this house is in my name until you and Rose divorce amicably. You're not welcome here. After the divorce, you'll have 3 months to move out. After that, this house belongs to Rose and my granddaughter. Nicholas froze for a moment, then pulled a piece of paper from his briefcase and handed it to Chan's mom. Mom, Rose gave birth to a girl, but the one I'm with now is carrying a boy. He can carry on our family name. This house should go to your grandson, not to some worthless girl. Chapter 5. Chan's mom ripped the paper to shreds, her voice filled with disappointment. Nicholas, your surname is Chan, but mine is Bai. Your son isn't carrying on my family's name. Nicholas' face darkened, and he glared at her. No wonder Dad left you. Aunt Fong is a million times better than you. He gathered the things Chan's mom had thrown out and turned to me. Rose, don't think you've won just because my mom's on your side. I'll make sure you regret this. I looked at him, expressionless. Nicholas, my biggest regret in life was meeting you and being with you. Fuming, Nicholas left with his belongings. Emma was quiet, her big eyes looking around, while Chan's mom stood motionless, filled with sorrow. I wanted to comfort her, but before I could, she turned to me, her face showing no sign of sadness, and reassured me. Rose, don't worry. When this goes to court, I'll testify on your behalf. In that instant, any words of comfort I had disappeared. Chan's mom didn't need my consolation. She had already steeled herself the moment she decided to stand by me. She was ready to face whatever came next. The next day, I received a phone call from Nicholas' stepmother. Hello, I answered the phone. A voice I'd never heard before greeted me. Hi, is this Rose? I'm Nicholas' stepmom. Would you be available to meet and talk? I'd never met this woman before, but I remembered Nicholas mentioning her back when we were in college. At the time, he was furious, telling me how she had stolen his father away and caused so much trouble at Chan's mom's workplace that she eventually had to resign. Even though Nicholas stopped talking about her, and Chan's mom never mentioned her, I had a deep-seated disdain for mistresses and couldn't speak to her politely. You might be his stepmom, but you're nothing to me. I'm free, but I don't want to meet with you. Whatever you have to say it over the phone. She was probably surprised at how quickly I refused. And there was a brief pause. Growing impatient, I added, if you have nothing to say, I'm hanging up. Don't waste my time. Wait, she called out. I didn't hang up right away. I wanted to see what they were up to. Here's the thing, I'm a lawyer. I've handled thousands of divorce cases, hundreds at the very least, and never once failed to achieve what my clients wanted. So what? What does that have to do with me? I retorted. She let out a small laugh and continued, now, I'll be handling Nicholas' divorce. If you're willing to negotiate, you can keep your daughter, but you'll have to leave with nothing and give up any claim to Nicholas' mother's property. Otherwise, I laughed coldly. Wow, just like father, like son. Is that all you've got? Trying to force me to leave with nothing? I won't agree to it. Do your worst. With that, I hung up and blocked her number. God, how I hate people who act like that. Chapter 6. My friend helped me organize all the documents and filed them with the court. Nicholas hasn't contacted me since, probably too busy taking care of his mistress and their heir. Just as I was hoping to quietly wait for the court's hearing notice, I got another call from the police and the hospital. My father had gotten into a fight with Nicholas, and my mother had been pushed to the ground by Nicholas' mistress and ended up in the hospital. When Chan's mom heard what had happened, she told me to head straight to the police station while she went to the hospital. We split up. When I arrived at the station, I saw my dad standing to one side, cradling his arm, while Nicholas' face was covered in slap marks and his body was littered with footprints. My dad used to box when he was younger. It's been a lifelong hobby, so he definitely had the upper hand against Nicholas, who spends all day sitting at a desk, barely exercising. The The police officer stood up when I came in and explained the situation to me. After learning about their relationship, the officer said it was a family dispute and advised us to resolve it ourselves. Nicholas didn't seem too happy about that. But seeing my father standing there, looking fierce, he didn't argue. I took my father and walked out. Nicholas looked like he wanted to say something, but my dad and I brushed right past him and got in the car. We drove off without a word. It wasn't until we were in the car that my dad told me what had happened. Nicholas' mistress had somehow found out where my parents lived and, though she wasn't visibly pregnant yet, she showed up at their apartment complex, talking to anyone who would listen. Do you know where Rose's family lives? I'm carrying her husband's child. But she refuses to divorce him and is trying to take all their money. What are we supposed to do if they take everything from me and the baby? My parents live in an older neighborhood where everyone knows each other. Even though people knew the mistress and Nicholas were in the wrong, a lot of them still stood around to gossip. Of course, some people called my mom, and when my parents got back from the supermarket, they rushed home. As soon as they got there, they saw the mistress pulling people aside, repeating her story. My mom stormed up to her and started yelling, "You home-wrecking whore! How dare you show your face here? You shameless bitch!" The mistress, seeing my parents red-faced with anger, puffed out her chest and said, "What? You want to hit me? Go ahead. I'm pregnant. Let's see if you have the guts." My parents are both educators, professors. They've never dealt with such shameless people before, and their upbringing kept them restrained. But then Nicholas showed up, and my dad, who had wanted to hit him for a while now, finally snapped. Seeing him standing in front of the mistress only made him angrier, and he grabbed Nicholas by the hair and started beating him. My mom was kicking him from the side, and the mistress shoved her to the ground. My mom fell hard. My dad was still cursing the pair of them from the passenger seat, while my face remained cold and hard. My parents had spent their lives as university professors, educating and guiding countless students, only to be humiliated by Nicholas and his mistress right outside their home. I had thought that this ugly situation was just between Nicholas and me, but now, they've gone after my parents. I won't let them get away with it. Since they had the nerve to show up at my parents' doorstep and cause a scene, I'll make sure they lose face completely. Chapter 7. My boss is a very successful woman who never exploits us and pays us far above the market rate. She's also always looking out for us. As it happened, my company had a business partnership with Nicholas' firm, so I gave her a call. After I explained everything to her, she was quiet for a moment before asking, "Are you okay?" From the moment I found out about Nicholas' affair to everything that followed, I hadn't shed a single tear. But hearing her ask that, the floodgates opened, and tears streamed down my face. She heard my sobs and immediately reassured me. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." 2 days later, I got another call from Nicholas, but I hung up without answering because I was on my way to the mistress' hometown. When Nicholas couldn't reach me, he started blowing up Chan's mom's phone. She answered to the sound of Nicholas shouting, "Mom, do you know what Rose did? Were you in on this?" Chan's mom kept her voice calm. "Weren't you the ones who started causing trouble at Rose's parents' place? Feeling embarrassed now? Do you even know what she did?" Her boss stood in front of the entire company and announced that I cheated with my secretary. "Misty is pregnant with your grandson, and now people are gossiping about her." Chan's mom smirked. "Now you care about the shame of cheating and being a mistress? Why didn't you think of that earlier?" Nicholas took a deep breath. "Put Rose on the phone. I don't want to talk to you." "What do you want to talk about?" I was focused on the road ahead. "Rose, you need to come to our company right now and apologize to Misty. You need to explain to everyone that we've already been divorced." "Nicholas, where was this energy before? I asked for a divorce ages ago, but you refused to split the assets and threatened me. It was your mistress who showed up at my parents' place. You want me to clear things up? Maybe in your next life." Nicholas was too furious to respond. I continued, "If I'm not mistaken, your mistress' family lives in a small town, right? Her parents are decent people. I wonder what they'll think when they find out their daughter is a homewrecker in the city." "Rose, don't go too far." Chan's mom hung up the phone. "Rose, just focus on driving." When we arrived at the entrance to the mistress neighborhood, the people we had hired met us there. After coordinating, the elderly volunteers pulled out a bright pink banner, "Lee family's daughter, Misty, is deeply in love with my husband as the legitimate wife. I am here to welcome her as a concubine." There was also a large screen nearby, looping through screenshots of their chat logs. Within minutes, a crowd had gathered at the entrance. A pair of modestly dressed middle-aged people rushed over. When they saw what was happening, their faces turned pale. Misty's mother lost control, pointing at me and shouting, "What are you doing? My daughter is not a mistress." Misty's father, however, frowned at the rolling chat logs on the screen. He pulled his wife back as she tried to hit me. He bowed to me and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't raise my daughter well. I'll handle this. But please, stop playing this in front of our neighbors." Seeing his humble attitude made me hesitate for a moment. But then I thought of my mother lying in a hospital bed. I stood up and held out a picture of my mom. Meeting his eyes, "This is my mother, who was pushed down by your daughter. She's still in the hospital. I'm still in the cooling off period of my divorce with Nicholas. And your daughter couldn't wait to come and act like a fool in front of my family. If you want to blame someone, blame your daughter. Blame yourselves for not raising her better. She chose to be a mistress. You better control your daughter. If this happens again, I won't be so kind next time." Chapter 8. Misty's mother was so furious she almost fainted. Looking at the surrounding neighbors pointing and gossiping, her father's pale face, and her mother on the verge of collapse, I turned and led my team away. We hadn't even driven out of the town when Misty's call came through. Curious to hear her enraged voice, I decided to pick up. "Rose, you bitch, who gave you the right to show up at my family's house? I'm telling you, I won't let you get away with this. I'm the one who won't let you get away with it," I shouted, cutting her off. "Misty, you'd better stay in your lane until Nicholas and I are divorced. If I find out you've harassed my family again, I will make sure you regret it." As I pulled up to the gate of my neighborhood, I saw Nicholas standing there. When he spotted my car, he rushed over. I had no intention of stopping, but he stepped directly in front of my car. "Rose, we need to talk." I looked at him without speaking, and he continued, "I'll sign the divorce papers. I'll leave with nothing. Emma's custody will be yours. Is that enough? Just please stop going to Misty's house. She's pregnant, and the stress isn't good for the baby. For the sake of the 10 years we've been together, give me a break. I'll cover your mom's medical bills. Misty and I will apologize to you. It was my fault for cheating during our marriage. I deserve to leave with nothing. I'll make sure to pay child support for Emma on time." The car's headlights illuminated Nicholas, and for a moment, I thought I saw the boy who had once promised to protect me. Does time really change someone so completely? No, time doesn't change a person. It simply reveals who they truly are over time. Chiseling away at the facade, my goal was to gain custody of Emma and ensure that Nicholas left with nothing. Now that I had achieved that, I didn't want to waste any more time entangling myself with him. After the mandatory cooling-off period, Nicholas and I officially divorced. As we walked out of the civil affairs office, he called after me, "Rose, I'm sorry." I turned to look at him and shook my head. "You don't need to apologize to me. You need to apologize to the person you were 10 years ago when you made those promises. Leaving you will only make my life better. As for you, you'll have to pay for your mistakes. And don't forget to pay child support on time." With that, I left without looking back. I had to get home. Emma is 4 months old now, and she's very attached to me. It's been 2 hours since she's seen me, and I'm sure she misses me. Chapter 9. When I got home, my dad was playing with Emma, while my mom and Chan's mom were busy in the kitchen. Yes, Chan's mom had decided to live with me. On the day Nicholas and I signed the divorce papers, Chan's mom stood off to the side, looking like a lost child. Several times, she looked like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. After we finished signing the papers, Nicholas stood up to leave and saw her standing there, with a sarcastic tone. He sneered, "So, now that we're divorced, I'll be living with my dad, and you'll be all alone. If you apologize to me now, I might still take care of you." Ever since she found out Nicholas had cheated, Chan's mom had quietly supported me from behind. From the beginning, I had decided that even after divorcing Nicholas, I would take her with me. I stood in front of Chan's mom and faced Nicholas. You don't need to worry about her. I'll take care of her from now on. Nicholas gave me a mocking look. You're going to take care of someone else's mom? You really are a saint, aren't you? This is none of your business. Please leave my home now, I said, ignoring his words and firmly telling him to go. Nicholas didn't linger. I took Chan's mom's hand and spoke seriously. Mom, don't worry. What I said earlier is true. You're Emma's grandmother. And you're my mom, too. She hesitated. Rose, will I be a burden to you? Of course not. I quickly reassured her. My parents haven't retired yet. And my maternity leave is ending soon. We'll need you to help take care of Emma. I wouldn't trust anyone else. Hearing that she would be helping with Emma, her expression softened, and she took my hand. Rose, thank you, Mom. I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for always standing by my side. Chapter 10. When Emma turned 5 months old, I returned to work. During the past month, with both moms helping to care for Emma, I also started focusing on losing weight. Every day, my dad prepared low-calorie meals for me, and with 4 hours of exercise each day, I managed to lose 20 pounds in a month. Although I hadn't yet returned to my pre-pregnancy weight, I looked much slimmer overall. On my first day back at work, my boss threw a welcome party for me. Everyone was aware of what I had been through, but no one brought it up. Each colleague greeted me with, "Welcome back, Rose." Once I got back into my work routine, my sleep schedule normalized, and I began losing weight even faster. Before long, I was back to my original figure. Emma thrived under the care of the 3 grandparents who doted on her. Chapter 11. 3 months flew by. With no worries at home, I began excelling at work, and before long, I was promoted to general manager. The next time I heard any news about Nicholas was during a business negotiation with his old company, where I overheard some gossip from his former colleagues. Apparently, the company didn't fire Nicholas outright after the scandal, but it had affected their reputation, so he was demoted. However, Nicholas chose to quit, claiming he needed to go home and inherit the family business. His father, Chan, owned a small factory. Though not as successful as a large corporation, it was still quite profitable, so Nicholas planned to take over. Nicholas and Misty were living well until they got into a car accident. Nicholas was rendered infertile, and Misty lost the baby. She was far along in her pregnancy, and by the time they got her to the hospital, complications had set in. Misty's life was saved, but the baby suffocated in the womb, and her uterus was so damaged that she would never have children again. To make matters even more dramatic, Nicholas' stepmother, at 51, discovered she was pregnant. The couple had been trying for a child for years, and now that she was finally pregnant, Nicholas' father decided to leave all his assets to his unborn son. Nicholas' stepmother began showing her true, mean-spirited nature. I heard that the house was in utter chaos. Nicholas' father decided that having 2 newly infertile people around was bad for his wife and child, so he kicked Nicholas and Misty out. Listening to this gossip, I felt a strange sense of detachment. This person who had once been by my side now seemed like a stranger, and his story felt like something from someone else's life. I thought I wouldn't see Nicholas again, but on Emma's birthday, he showed up at my doorstep. I just wanted to see the baby, Nicholas said, standing awkwardly at the door. He looked disheveled, his eyes red with bloodshot veins. When he saw me, his face lit up a little. Even though he looked pitiful, I still didn't let him see Emma. I only showed him a few photos. As he looked at the video of Emma on my phone, he said softly, "She's so beautiful. She looks just like you." I didn't respond. Instead, I said, "That's enough. My parents are waiting for me. I need to go." Nicholas looked at me, his eyes filled with emotions I couldn't decipher. "Rose, if I hadn't made that mistake, do you think we would have been happy?" I couldn't help but roll my eyes. "Nicholas, you know there are no what-ifs." When I got back inside, Emma was tottering towards me, learning to walk. I scooped her up and kissed her face. Later that evening, after we blew out the candles for Emma's birthday, Chan's mom received a call from the police. Nicholas had committed murder. He killed his father and stepmother, And when the police searched his apartment, they found Misty's body, which had been there for days. I broke out in a cold sweat, terrified to think what might have happened if I had agreed to let him in earlier. Nicholas was eventually arrested near my home, holding a knife when they found him. When Nicholas was sentenced to death, he requested to see me one last time. The police urged me to meet him, but I refused. I knew clearly that Nicholas had wanted to drag us down with him. My daughter was only 1 year old. I couldn't risk going to see someone who had almost endangered her life. Nicholas died, and Chan's mom grieved for several days. Finally, with swollen eyes, she told me, "This is the last time I'll cry for him." He sent me a letter. I have no idea what it said because as soon as I saw the sender's name, I tore it up without reading it. Whether it was an apology or a complaint, I didn't care to know. Just as I had said before, I would only get better after leaving him. I don't think about him anymore. Even news about him has no place in my life. After all, I have no regrets. I'm happy now, and my future will be even brighter.